Hi, welcome to Touching the Afterlife. I'm so excited to have with us today Heidi. She's going to be sharing her story, how she came out of Mormonism, which she calls a cult. And you're going to find out why through her riveting testimony and how demons are involved in this secret cult. Welcome with me, Heidi.
Hi, everybody. This is a good podcast because I was told to talk to this lady by a viewer and I would have never found her otherwise. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful God brought us together today. Thank you.
Amen. Well, let's get going and share with us everything you want to share.
Thank you. Well, so I am an ex-Mormon. I'm called an ex-Mo, basically. And I was raised in the church. I am still here in Utah. I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah currently. And it's a weird place to be when you're coming out of the church, right? I mean, it's somewhere where, most people, I would say 8 out of 10 are still very LDS or at least believe in the faith. And even if they don't live it, they still are. And they call those Jack Mormons. And I was this for a very long time. And it was just part of my life. It was, I did what my parents did, what my family did, what everybody did. But I did have one weird dichotomy, and I think it semi-saved me early. And that was my mom was this Jack Mormon that I speak of. And she lived in Idaho, and we lived there for the first maybe 10 years of my life. And we got more, even though it seems like it would be the same because Utah and Idaho are so close, it's not. It's so different. It's a different type of Mormonism there. It's a little less stressful and a little less, I mean, my one friend JJ is always saying the mothership is in Utah, right? And so it's a little further away from the mothership and you are able to kind of grow a little better. And my family was kind of going through a lot of tumultuous things. My stepdad was really abusive. And so I spent a lot of time with my neighbors who were LDS, and they made sure I got baptized and did all the things, but I didn't have that hardcore oppression on me until I was about 12. And at 12 years old, I ended up living with my grandma. And this is where the full Mormonism begins. Like, this is where it comes punching in. She was through the Temple Mormon. She is, Pioneer Mormon, Pioneer bloodline family. Like, that means like the start of the church people. And when I say this, people have the hardest time with the bloodline thing. And I'm going to go into it more later, but it is what it is. She came here with the pioneers back to the history of the church. So she took everything very seriously, and so did her mom. And those, above her came from my grandma's side, came up from Acadia. There's a whole weird story there with the Micmac or they are called Mi'kmaq nowadays. But the Mormons kind of infiltrated this whole area and started coming in through all the different areas, like through Canada and through, across the plains to the west. They settle here in Utah, and that was part of my family. And so this family was so entrenched. I would say, I think every single one of my great grandma's kids went through the temple. My grandma's kids, however, she married a convert. And this is like super naughty when you're in the church. So when you're in the church, they raise you from a young age. I would say 4. They start saying, you're going to go to the temple someday. You're going to go to the temple someday. And so they constantly talk about this. And they always say, don't date anyone you wouldn't marry. And so it's really impressionable on us. Like, you will not marry anybody but another Mormon. And they'll say that's a lie, but it's not. I mean, they're open arms with lots of people, but that doesn't mean they want that for their kid. Okay. And so this is kind of my life at this point. My grandparents got married very young. My grandma was 14. My grandpa was 16. And he was a Catholic originally. And so he did finally kind of convert. I would say he was a baby Christian for a long time because he was just really into biker gangs and all kinds of crazy stuff. So he was doing that. My grandma was doing this side over here, and she's just trying to get to heaven every way possible, and maybe twice, once for my grandpa, right? And so it continues this way. And my grandpa, he just continued with the Sundowners. His kids didn't make it through the church. My mom was semi-close to make it to the temple, but she never believed it. She told me later, and she's the born-again Christian in the family. Well, not the only one, but one of the first. She said, I just never felt like I should go. And I was like, yeah, well, you had a lot of pressure. She had more pressure than I did at this point because I'm just a teenager. And they're just pressing on her all, oh, you don't know. You will never know. You'll never know until you go. You're missing out on the full, experience of God. And they do this. And so she just kind of always stood back. And yes, she was a Jack Mormon. So people will say it's because she likes coffee and smokes cigarettes. Well, maybe that, but also me and her have had some deep conversations as we've gotten older. And she's like, I just never felt like I should go there. And I thought that was weird. I wish I had had that. My husband was the same way. And they were lucky, I guess, because everything in the church is wonderful until you go to the temple. Like everything is great. You're just like, I'm in the best church ever. I know all the things. I'm the best thing I've ever been. Like we have the full knowledge. There's no other true church on earth, just so people are aware, apparently. And they also have the true form of masonry. They will tell you that as well, if you know about masonry. Otherwise, it doesn't come up. So my grandma's deep entrenching me in all of this. And at 17, I started dating this guy pretty serious. And before that, I was just flirting around, pretty innocent dating. But this guy really liked. And she was like, oh, you got to get married. You got to get married. You're going to make a mistake, physical mistake. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I have only known him like 60 days. Maybe we should wait. We do like each other, but she was just insistent. Like she had gotten pregnant early and my grandpa was this, convert, and it hadn't happened for her. She had to go to the temple alone. So she was pushing, 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 but this guy was also going to have to convert. And so no matter what, I wasn't going to be able to go through the temple. And so long story short, we did get married, but it was like within 7 days. My grandparents, instead of going to senior prom, they were like, hey, why don't you go to Vegas and get married today? And then if you do that, like we'll pay for it. And you have to remember, I'm a ward of the court at this point. I don't have very much money. Like it's a whole problem with my parents. My dad is in prison at this point. I forgot that part. Um it's just it's messy. And so I'm thinking, seen all these uncles and aunts. None of them made it to the temple. None of them did what my grandma wanted. And they're all kind of in this horrible chaos. Like they're going in and out of jail. Like they're involved in biker gangs. My mom's not bad, but she's just still not. She's drinking coffee, for heaven's sakes. Like this is your mental brain when you're in the church. And she wears tank tops. Now I guess they can wear sleeveless shirts like this because they got new garments, but whatever. She just wasn't the worst of the worst, but nobody had made it. So I wanted to feel like I was doing something right. Like, you're already ruining your grandparents' whole retirement plan. You've already bounced into their life. Like, it would maybe be good for me to get married and get out of their house, is kind of how I felt. And they were pressuring me like crazy. They were just like, you're going to give up your virginity. Like, I'll just put it out there. It was horrible. Like they were going to give me a car if I graduated as a virgin. So they did give me a car. So it's all really manipulative. But at that time, you have to remember, like I've been beaten and stuff, like not taken care of. These people are taking care of me. So this is love to me. This is like very important to me. And my husband did join the church. He was 25. I was 17. My parents had to sign for me. Well, my grandma, because my parents didn't have legal custody anymore, had to sign for me to get married. And so we go ahead. And honestly, I would say the first year and a half of our marriage was pretty good. We didn't go to the temple, see. We couldn't. He was a convert. So once you convert into the Mormon church, before you go through the temple, you have to wait 1 full year. And I don't know if they changed that. That was in 1994. And so this is a long time ago. They could have changed things, but long story short, he did the things. We finally get to the point where we're going to go through the temple, and I'm very pregnant at this point, like extremely pregnant. I think I was like 8.5 months. Any day, it was like far. And so we go to the temple, and this is where things got bad for me. Like I loved the church. I thought everything was good about the church. They fellowship you. If you need to move, they'll come. They'll help you move. They'll call the elders quorum. If you need a blessing right now at midnight, in the middle of the night, they'll come right now and anoint you with oil and bless you and say a blessing on your head. And they'll do all these things for you. And, they're like 100% in, like really. And so you feel like you are, 100% loved, accepted, taken care of. And I hadn't had that, see, other than just this short time with my grandma, but all of that's conditional. And so is the church. But I'm used to that by now. I'm used to these conditions. And I'm like, right, you just have to do the things and then the people will love you. Right. Like that's what we need to do. So I did that for a very long time. But in the temple, it just shattered me. I was sitting there with all my family. It's supposed to be the happiest day of your life. They train you for this since you are 4 years old. I have a handkerchief still in my hope chest from when I'm like 12 from girls. It's called Mutual. Girls Mutual to, keep this handkerchief and take it with you to the temple and keep your virtue. And you never want to get a dirty smudge on your white, pure handkerchief. Like they've really used sex like so bad. They literally tell you if you make a sexual sin that you don't fix, that it is next to murder. And they will tell you that. And so as a teenager, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm having these thoughts. Maybe I should just get married. Like that sounds like a better plan than going to hell. So yeah, we're sitting there and they're starting something called initiatory. So during initiatory, this is how it used to be. Look, it's changed. And I'm going through in 1996 in the Bountiful Temple, and I have all my certificates up on my Instagram because people have called me out. So I have my baptism, my temple certificate, everything you want to see is there. I've taken off the last names because that's not fair to my family or my ex-husband. So there's that, but it will say Heidi Luv on there. That is my real name. And so anyways, you're naked, you have this poncho on and it's open. It's just an open poncho. You're naked underneath. And this woman comes in and she's doing these anointings with oil. Well, if you know anything about masonry, which I did not, this is part of masonry, but a woman's doing it. So I'm like, first of all, I've been told my whole entire life that no woman can hold the priesthood. Well, that's not true. In the temple, they can, but they don't tell us this. As young girls, they don't empower you whatsoever to think you will ever be anything like a man. You are saved by your husband. And so, first of all, I'm questioning, like, what is this woman doing in here? Where's the guy? So I said to my grandma, hey, what's up with the lady in here? She's like, oh, don't worry about it. It's different in the temple. I'm like, yeah, but I want my stuff to be legit. Like, this is a girl, go get the guy. I'm this indoctrinated. I'll be naked in front of the guy rather than take this lady. And she's like, no, because you're not dressed. And they have women that do this here in the temple. Okay. So we move forward and, they don't touch you sexually, but it's like so close. It's like above your chest. It's like above your belly button, inner thigh, like very uncomfortable stuff. I'm not saying they molested me. I don't need to sensationalize this. It's weird enough. Okay. But as I'm like crying, I'm now in tears. I'm pregnant. So I'm probably extra weepy, I guess, at this point. I'm completely bawling. And my great grandma looks at me and she's quite old. And she says, I don't know what you're crying about. They scrubbed me naked in a bathtub with oil. So at this point, I stopped crying because now I feel guilty and I feel weird. So I'm still naked. And this lady is still there and they finish this up and then they give you your new underwear and you're never so happy to put something on. So like, you're just like, great, cool. And you get your temple garments. People know these now, right? Your Mormon underwear, your magical underwear, your Jesus jammies. What else do they call them? They call them all this stuff. And so you wear these for the rest of your life, just so people know you're never to take them off ever and you have lots of pairs of them. So if you do have to change them, and back in the olden days for my great grandma and stuff, they would leave their arm, like one arm in and bathe that arm and then like wash and then take that side off and put a new one. It was really complicated. They don't do that anymore. Thank heavens. They just don't want them on the floor. And you are supposed to take them off right hand first. I don't know if this is still the same. This is how it was when I was 1986. Put them in right hand first. This is like how it's done. So back then they were supposed to be the closest to your skin. You're not supposed to wear anything underneath them, including underwear. And they are your underwear. They're kind of like boxer brief. That's like the best way to explain it. And it does have like a panty area and everything in it. And then it's like a tiny silky t-shirt. They have a lot of different brands of fabric, not brands, like mixes, like poly, 50/50 cotton, nylon, whatever you want. If you like silky, if you don't, blah, blah, blah. And so they did make a change to them last year, which I actually was shocked. I didn't think they'd ever do. They cut the arms so people could wear shirts like this. And they also have dress ones now. So it looks like a slip, which I'm assuming happened as a registered nurse because women were never having any air to anything. It was always closed. And I know for my grandma, she suffered from horrible urinary issues her whole life. And so did her mother. So I'm wondering if the church finally got the clue that that's probably not a good idea for women. So long story short, they did do that. That's like, I didn't think they'd ever change them again. They hadn't changed them since they were long johns with a like butt flap in the back, but they were 2 pieces when I went. And then you put your bra. And if you need panties on top of them, like if you feel strange without them close to you, I guess you can wear those over the top, which is so many clothes already. So now you're super hot all the time. And then you're still in temple. You get your temple dress on, you put your one-sided robe on, and you put a sash on, some shoes that are like slip-on slippers that are white. And you've got to buy all this stuff. I mean, you could rent it, but most people don't. And you can't rent certain pieces that are like touching your skin pieces. You've got to have all that. So this is expensive. I think when I went, it was like $350 just for my clothes. And my ex-husband had to get his too. And so you don't get married in your wedding dress. You put all this stuff on and then you go in the sealing room. Well, if you've had I'd already had my endowment done. So first I'll finish the endowment. You go in, you do this whole Adam and Eve masonry in the garden. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the show on Hulu about Mormonism, but they have one on there and it shows kind of a temple ceremony on there. And it's pretty close. I'll think of the name in just a minute, but there's chanting, hands up and down in a circle. Women used to veil their face. It got really strange. Lucifer is there in the story because Lucifer is Jesus' brother, and they're telling you all this weird stuff. And yeah, yep. And so we're processing at this point, right? You're kind of in shock, I would say. And back in the day, if people know anything about like Babylonian ceremonies or old ceremonies, like really old, I'm talking the first religions of all time. There are people that do these things with drugs. Okay. They do these same initiatories. In fact, if you put into AI right now, what ceremony is the closest to the Mormon temple ceremony, it will say Babylonian. And so that right there, we have an issue. And you're sitting there kind of in shock, but you're not using drugs. And so I postulate at this point, that is the point. They're using shock to get the same effect as drugs, to get an outer body experience so that you feel like either this is the best thing ever, or you're just like, oh my gosh, I've got to get out of here. You either go into fight or flight, or you think God came down and talked to you, probably. I'm not being serious, but like you have an experience most likely. And for those people, it seals their fate, right? Like they're in forever and ever. I don't know that you could get one of them out because it's so powerful. Even the shock part, I was obviously a fight or flight. I started freaking completely out. And if my grandma hadn't been there, I think I would have left. But I don't know though, because your whole family is there and it's the best day of your life. And you're sitting there telling yourself, this is the best day of my life. I've learned about this since I was 4 years old and my whole family is here and they're all watching me right now. Like, so you just sit there and I think you disassociate a little bit, to be quite honest. You're learning about all this weird stuff that they do not prepare you for. They'll lie and say they do. They do these temple prep classes that teach you nothing. You're totally unprepared for what you're walking into. It's not at all true. And so you get through it. It's 2 hours long. By the time you're done, I think you kind of zone out. And then you get to the point where you're going to go into the celestial room and you learn all the handshakes so you can pass the sentinels and angels that are protecting the veil of heaven. Okay. And if you don't know these handshakes, you're not going to make it. They don't care how good you are. I don't care if you're Mother Teresa, you're not going to heaven. So you better learn it. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like, what if I forget? Like, what's going to happen? And my grandma's like, no, that's why you go again and again. And we'll get to that in a bit. You get your new name too. And you're anybody that knows anything about magic, this is all going to sound really familiar, or like the Gnostic Mass. And these new names are an interesting thing because anybody that does magic or has known anything about magic will know that if they give you a special name, it's to control you. They know this name and it's attached to you, and with this they can control you literally, like it's supposed to be. I'm not saying it actually works, but this is the thought behind it. Maybe it does. And you never tell that name to anyone else except women. Women have to tell their husband. So my husband goes through the veil first. He never tells me his name. He's only going to tell his name to God at the veil. Fake God. There's a guy back there. And he goes through, and then who am I saved by? Remember, fake God, like he's representing God, is saving him, pulling him through the veil, but not me. Why am I saved? I'm saved by my husband because I cannot hold the priesthood. I cannot save myself. I have to have a husband, and I have to be saved by him by telling him my name, and he'll pull me through. Right. So this is what we do. And we're all happy that it's over. Believe me on that one. You get to the celestial room and you sit there and you decompress. It's kind of a decompression room. You don't do anything in there. It's just beautiful in there, and it's supposed to represent heaven. Like you made it, like you're in heaven now. And you sit there and you're like, I don't know about this. But it is very beautiful. Like I will say this, the Mormons have the money, and everyone knows they do, to make them very beautiful. And so after that part is done, then you do your sealing. And so you could do it on the same day as all of this stuff I'm telling you, but that literally takes 2.5 hours, maybe even 3. And so most people split it up because it's long and it's tedious and your brain is going crazy, and you're a little traumatized. So we didn't have time for that. We did it all on the same day. So we went directly to our sealing, which would be your wedding if you hadn't already been married. See, I'd already been married because I'm a heathen that married the convert. Sorry to his Catholic mom. Like, I feel a little bad about that at this point. Not that the Catholics are all benevolent. I'm just saying I don't know. In some ways, I think they're better off because they at least believe in the Trinity. But here we are. You kneel over this altar. I don't know if you guys have seen the photos that I have, but I'm almost certain it's to spec, right, of the original Solomon's temple, because they say that. They say, yes, we build our temples just like Solomon's temple, and this is the point, and they're benevolent in every way. So we're kneeling over that, and there's 2 opposing mirrors on either side, and you're looking in those, and they're saying to you, you're going to be married for not for normal. No, not biblical, right? In the Bible, it says there will be no marriage in heaven. We'll be like the angels. We won't need it. And so, no, the Mormons know more than that. They know that you're going to be married for time and all eternity. And you look in those mirrors and it makes like a portal looking, like if you've ever faced 2 mirrors together, it makes this weird tunnel. People hate when I say portal, but that's what it looked like to me. There is like this weird green glow that always is captured in every picture that I've ever seen of the mirrors facing each other, no matter what temple it's at. So I find that interesting.
Wow.
But you're looking in that, you promise these oaths. They used to be blood oaths, and that doesn't mean they spilled the blood, but that you would swear you would cut your tongue out and slice your throat and all this, spill your stomach if you swore these, if I do what I am doing right now, basically, and tell the secrets. And these are Mason oaths. And I didn't know what a Mason was. I was a 19, almost 20-year-old kid that had no idea what a Mason was. And I actually never knew what a Mason was in my whole life until I was 37 years old. And so I didn't even know that existed. I had no idea. And so we are sitting there doing all this stuff. This was a much easier thing for me because it was like a wedding. And if I had been getting married for the first time, those clothes that I describe with the green apron and the white, it looks like a Gnostic mass outfit, except we wear clothes underneath. They go naked with their one-breasted, thing, like a toga looking apron thing. Anyway, that's what you get married in. You don't get married in your beautiful wedding dress. It doesn't matter how much you paid for it. And if you have any more non-Mormon family that wants to be with you on your wedding day, like my ex-husband, his family couldn't come. His family couldn't come to that. They're Catholics. They had to wait outside. And so that's how you get married. And everybody gets married in the same thing. And they actually put rules on the girls that did get married with their wedding dresses underneath. If you want to opt for this, you can put the dress on and then put everything on top of you, like all the things you have to have. If you do that now, you cannot have too big of a dress because they made rules about it because it was becoming a problem. And so, yeah, you don't even get to choose that. You don't have a regular ceremony. There's no with this ring, I thee wed. There's none of that. And after you're done, you leave, you put on your wedding dress. If you had a wedding, I didn't have one that day, but if you did, you pretend like you got married in this tuxedo and this wedding dress you didn't even wear probably. So, and then you go have a reception, and that's how most people get married in the Mormon church. So the only time you go through and get these rights that I'm talking about is if you're going to be married soon, like within weeks, like you have to have a date, and it's all very specific, or you're going on a mission. Missionaries do the same thing, not the marriage part, just the rest. And so they do all this right before they go on their missions, and then they get sent away from their family at a very young age at 18. I'm sure it does the same thing to them, like this shock value. You're kind of messed up, and then you leave and go away from your family. And even if you had plans for college or have a scholarship, too bad for you. Like every male is expected to go serve a mission, and females that weren't married by the time they were 21 as well. But I guess they've changed that. I think they changed them to the same. They used to push that to not do it any other way just because they wanted women married. And so they won't say that, but that's true. And so here I am in my life, and I spend the next good 10 years of my life married to this man. He ends up really on left field. At some point, we have to get a divorce. He's just on drugs. He won't stop. He's philandering. Polygamy is no longer part of the mainstream Mormon church. And I don't know if he got the memo, but I wasn't okay with what he was doing. That's just not for me. So he did cheat on me with a polygamist that was already married, which is a really rare and weird story. And I didn't know. And my grandma knew, which is really weird. But they pushed me to stay with him over and over and over because we were married for time and all eternity. And even when I got a divorce, I did not get a temple divorce. I couldn't. You cannot get a temple divorce until you have another man that can take his place and literally go do this all over again. So as a woman, you are continued to be married to men via this is like spiritual polygamy is what I would call it. My uncle got married like 9 times, and all of them in the temple. You never had to have a temple divorce, but the women do. Women can only be married one time. So since I didn't have somebody to take his place because I was single for a while, and then my next husband, he's not Mormon, like he's not going to go through the temple Mormon anyway. Then to this day, I am technically married to that man in the Mormon church. And I'm going to have my name removed. I assumed that they would throw me out by now. I've been doing my stuff for like almost 3 years now, speaking out. The Mormon church is across the street, not even a block. They've never thrown me out. My neighbors know what I do. They're in the Relief Society. Every other person I've known that speaks out or whatever has been excommunicated by now. I think they're afraid to do it. Either two things, my bloodline, and they want to not throw me out, or they're afraid that I will Google glasses it and they don't want that. So I guess I will have to do it the hard way, which means I have to get an attorney to remove my name from the church because they still count me as an active member to this day. And I refused to do it before I got excommunicated because it's this whole big process. I just assumed it would be easier to get thrown out than leave. But to this day, they've never done it. So to those people out there listening to this that are like, she just doesn't want to do the things, and she's just, she didn't want to not drink coffee, and she wanted to have, wild parties or so. I don't know, drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes. No, I didn't. I never did any of those things. I still don't do those things. What they do to the men is they held a disciplinary council for my ex-husband, and he got 6 months probation and told to stop doing that. For me, even though I was divorced from him when I got a boyfriend and did have a relationship outside of my marriage, but I was divorced. But I wasn't divorced in the Mormon temple. I got in trouble and had to go through a disciplinary council. And it was like this big whole thing. And I'm like, wait a minute, we're divorced. We are literally on paper to the state. You people know this, like, I'm divorced, but he got less time than I did for cheating in our we were married and like in the marriage, not just separated or whatever. No. So yeah, it's always fun. The guys, it's definitely a good old boys club, and that is for sure. And that's how it's ran. I mean, the priesthood is everything, and women will never have the priesthood to the equivalent of a man. Do they have some parts of it for the temple people? Yeah, they've had something called the second anointing, which we can talk about in a bit, but they aren't still on the level of a man. You're only saved by your husband. And so yeah, they told me even when I was going to have my husband go through, we talked about it for a little while. We were going back and forth, and they were like, "Oh, don't worry. You don't have to have your son sealed to you." And I'm like, "Wait, he was born after?" And they're like, "No." And I said, "Okay, hold on." They said he's born in the covenant. And this means that the people that are married were sealed in the temple, and their baby does not need to be sealed to them because it was born to that marriage. Okay. So if I had had a baby before me and my husband went through like she was in my belly, but if I had had her prematurely or something and she had already been born, we would have to physically take her with us to have her sealed to us. But if she's born, or any baby is born after the marriage occurs, it's called being born in the covenant. And so I said, but my son isn't my ex-husband's. Like, don't we need to have him like sealed to us? I mean, that seems strange. And you know what they said? No. They said, no, this is why my ex-husband was like, yeah, we're not doing that. Ever. He was out after this. We were taking the temple class, the whole 9 yards. They're like, no, you just take his place. And he said, excuse me. Okay. So are you telling me that the guy that I raise his children and he's derelict and doesn't take care of them whatsoever, this guy is the fake dad of my son, my blood son? This went over like, oh, it was not good. And so they said, well, it'll all be fixed now because you're just going to take and he's like, no. You're telling me if I never do this, that guy that doesn't take care of anything, that's on drugs and running all over the country being crazy, is the fake dad to my blood son. And they just sat there. The look on their faces was great. They just sat there.
Wow.
And he's a redhead anyway. And then his face turned red as well. And we just never talked about the temple again. He was like, this is off the table. We're never doing this. And I was like, okay. I'm actually grateful for him, because if we had gone back, maybe I would have never gotten out. I don't know. But
so
we
Heidi,
didn't.
you're starting to question things, it sounds like, and the secrets and all the different things going
It was
on.
confusing. Yes.
Right.
It was starting to be, but you have to understand, who am I going to go to, right? Okay. So if you have questions about the temple, like real ones, not just like, oh, what do I do to go to the temple? Don't drink coffee. Like basic things. No, they'll tell you. But if you have a real question about the temple, you can't ever ask it, not even to your mother, father, brother, closest confidant, best friend, except when you're inside the temple itself. And then you're doing all these ceremonies, so there's no time to talk about it until you get to the celestial room, and then everybody's in a hurry because they've been doing this thing for 2.5 hours. So you can. I did finally corner my grandma in the celestial room, and I was like, bro, I didn't call her that, but I was like, what is happening? What is all this about? And she's like, you know what? It doesn't even matter because it's all going to be worked out in heaven, and God is perfect, and you just don't need to worry about this stuff. And I started asking things like about my crazy uncle that had been married so many times. I'm like, well, which wife does he pull through? Like, does he pull them all through? Like, or is he like a spiritual polygamist? Like, what does he do? You know? And she's like, we don't worry about those things. We let God take care of that. I'm like, right. So I'm starting to be salty, a little bit salty, but I'm still pretty young. I'm still like 27. And so at this point, a lot of chaos, as if my younger life hadn't been chaos enough. It really starts getting chaotic. I become a registered nurse. I'm a single mom, like I said, during that time. Then I married my second husband, and my ex-husband's just causing all kinds of problems. My grandma's getting salty at me because I'm asking questions. I'm fighting with my mom because she's not a Mormon, and she's trying to tell me stuff. And I'm like, you're crazy, because at this point, I do want to hear, but I don't, right? Like, because this is rocking my whole entire universe. Like, I'm like, I can't, can't do this.
The
Yeah.
audience. So for us listening, just to clarify, your mom is a born again Christian at this point.
She is. Yes. And she not only is a born again Christian, she's a Stevens minister at this point. So she is really into the church. And I have to tell people this: when you guys think of people in your life, and it doesn't have to be just Mormons, anybody, a non-believer, and you think it's wasted on them, like, I'm not going to keep trying, they'll never change, blah, blah. Don't do it. Just listen. Don't push it and try and black pill people, but sprinkle these little things every now and again on people, because my mom, I'm sure she never thought I would leave. Like, you have to understand, how cruel we were with my mom. Like, do you know my mom goes to the Rock and Roll Jesus Church? Oh my gosh, it's so ridiculous. Like, they have guitars there. Like, I mean, the Mormon church is not like this. It's very boring and quiet, and yeah, you don't do that. So we would make fun of her. We would tell her, like, you're clearly led astray, you know. And my uncle tried to tell me, he becomes a born again Christian, and he tries to tell me about these blood oaths. Remember, I didn't do the blood oaths because they got thrown out before I went. And so I'm thinking he's lying, because I have been through, you're lying to me. I went through the temple. They didn't do that there. And so he's like, no, you got to look back. Grandma did it. And I'm like, no, that's not true. And so I asked her, I did. She's like, that's a lie. It's just a lie. Just don't listen to them. So look, I'm being reinforced with, like, yeah, it's probably a lie because I did it and I know that's not true. Like, I went through and that didn't happen. But they changed it, and they changed it in I believe it was 1978 or 1980 is when they changed the ceremony. They no longer required you to reenact slitting your throat or slitting your belly or cutting out your tongue. And so I'm being reinforced with positive at this point, thinking they're liars. Look at this. You know, they're telling lies. And so, but I'm cracking. And in the Mormon church, we call that, like, your shelf is going to break. So you can only stack so many books on your shelf before it falls. And everybody has this moment that's an exmo where they can tell you, they'll know what that means. Like, when did your shelf break? You can ask people that when you're an exmo. And so my shelf is holding on, but it is bad. It's wobbly and I'm not doing okay. And so then I get really sick and I almost die because I got cancer in my thyroid, and it was already stage 4 by the time I knew. And so I'm super sick. Like, they had to cut it out and do a radical disectomy of the whole area in my throat, and take out my thyroid. And it was really very bad. And then I did radiation. And this is when I'm very young. Like, this was kind of jarring for me because I'm like, I do all these things and now all this bad stuff is happening. And I'd always struggled a lot with my health anyway. Like, I have asthma and all this stuff. And I just felt I was getting sour a little bit to God in general, but I never left or anything. I was just angry. And as I'm going through this, I notice a couple things. A, my grandma does not care nearly as much about me as she used to, or about what I'm up to, or anything else. She's very focused on my daughter. My daughter at this point is 14. So she is starting to groom her for the same things. And her boyfriend is going on a mission soon. And she's really focused in on this. And I'm starting to hear anti-Mormon propaganda because the internet is a thing. And so I'm starting to research stuff because I'm a researcher by nature. I was in the debate team. I lettered in it. Like, I'm a big, huge nerd. And so I start looking at this stuff. And then the Mormon church comes out with a slogan: doubt your doubts, don't doubt your faith. All right. So you start feeling guilty. You do this back and forth for a while. And I'm hanging on, but I end up getting divorced as a result. So this is my second husband, the father of my son, and he could not handle the illness. I don't know why that rocked him so hard, but he just shut down completely. And it was almost like he'd rather lose me now than ever go through that again. And so now I'm feeling really defeated. This is like horrible. And he's checked out completely. And I meet my current husband, and he is just like me. He's an exmo. He got out. He's a lot smarter than I was. He got out at 16. He never did the things. He was like very indoctrinated. His parents are still to this day extremely in the church. His whole family is extremely in the church. They are also settlers, like the whole thing. And he comes from a very strong Mormon background. For him to leave as he did at 16, and granted, some of his was because he wanted to smoke and party, but he still didn't do it. He still didn't go back, even when he found God, even when he was ready for God, even when he started reading the Bible diligently. He still was like, yeah, I just don't think the Mormons have it. And so he was lucky. I always tell him, you're really lucky, but also he's something else that I'm not. He's savable. So in the Mormon church, if you leave and you know everything, you've been through the temple, you've done all the rites and rituals, then you're no longer salvageable. You are an apostate, and the only thing that's next to that is murder. So you're going to outer darkness, which is kind of like Mormon hell. It's the absence of God or any connection with God, and the absence of anything, no connection with anything. I guess you're just floating in blackness, basically. And that's what they scare you with. So they say if you leave and you speak out, especially if you speak out, that's what's going to happen to you. So not only are you kind of scared to death to leave, you're going to upset everybody. You're going to upset your whole entire family. My husband's like, you got to watch these sermons. And it was The Heart of the Matter with Sean McCraney. I'll never forget. And you can still look those up. He used to be Mormon too, and he left. He was a bishop and everything. He was kind of high up in the church, and he speaks out. And I started listening to these back then, people weren't walking around with headphones all the time. Okay. This is like, I want to say, I'm trying to think, 2012, probably 2012, 2013. And so I'm just listening like out loud on the phone. And next thing I know, my grandma is contacting me. She's sending me letters. She's freaking out. She sent the missionaries over. She's telling my daughter not to be around me. And I'm like, this is a lot. You need to calm down. And she's like, you're going to leave the church. You're going to leave you're poisoning the kids, all this stuff. And I'm like, look, I'm just listening to this show. Like I'm listening to other God shows too. Like, I don't know why you're so upset about this. She's like, no, you haven't been going to the temple. You haven't been doing everything. So she decides to play really hardball when I say that I'm going to start going to these born again Christian churches, and I'm going to church with my mom, and I get saved. She delivers a protective order to me via the police and takes my daughter away and says, I beat my daughter in her head and face daily. So she does that on her first day of school for her senior year. I missed almost her whole senior year. She was 17. She took her and made up lies, and I almost had to go. And people will say, that's not true. She must have been on drugs or some horrible thing for that to happen. No, this is why. If you make an accusation against anybody at least in the state of Utah, and that child is technically in harm's way, they will take your child away for 30 days, and then they will have a hearing, and then they will have more hearings. And it's just, your kid is with this person until you prove that you're not the abuser. It's not the other way around.
Are you saying, Heidi, that you gave your life to Jesus, you became born again, and you had hell to pay, and your grandma spoke these things that were lies to and took your daughter?
And it gets worse. So she not only takes my daughter, and I think she found out, I think maybe my mom had said that I didn't get rebaptized at this point, but I went down for the call, and I accepted Jesus. And I just told my grandma, like, I'm not going to go back to the Mormon church ever. And she's like, freaks out, does this whole CPS thing. Well, remember, she knows how this game works. She did it with me. She took me too from my mom. There were real problems with my mom. And there was substantiated abuse there from her husband. But she knows how this game is played. And she does it with me. And thank actual God that the CPS lady told my daughter, look, I've talked to every teacher. I've talked to all these people. They say your mom's been on like prom committees. Your mom's been there with you. They've never seen any marks on you, that you're well adjusted, like no signs of abuse whatsoever. So I just want you to know you're turning 18. And this is while the court case is still on. You're going to be 18 and we're going to put you on the stand. And if you lie, we will perjure you. So I guess she believed me. Thank heavens. And my daughter said to the lady, because she told me this story, she said, I don't even know what my grandma put on that paper. So I don't even know what you want me to do about that. Oh, that's interesting. So they dropped the case, but I was pregnant at this time with my new husband. And, I'm having all kinds of problems from all this stress. Like I'm bleeding, like I've been in the hospital multiple times now. Already I wasn't supposed to ever be able to have another baby. Like that came out of nowhere. Her name is Faith, because we were like, oh my gosh, like I just finished radiation stuff. Like it was not the best timing. But I also had infertility in the past, and I was like, where'd this baby come from? But she was there. And I was 37. I'm getting old. I actually freaked out. I was like, check it again. Like, I don't know what you're doing. Between us, we have 6 kids. So that was a lot. And my grandma's decides, okay, we can't take her kid away. But the CPS lady did say, I would let a dead dog lie for a minute and not force your daughter to return. Let her come back. Let her just love her, send her messages. Like, this lady was nice. Like, I know a lot of people have horrible CPS stories. It wasn't mine. This lady was just like, go to therapy, whatever. So we did all that. And she did end up coming back before my baby was born. But meanwhile, my grandma decides, since she can't sue me for my daughter, she's going to sue me. And she's going to take my house. So she decides to tally up every receipt she's ever spent on my children. Not on me. Not borrowed. Not that. She takes every receipt, and she's an avid receipt keeper, including a trip to Disneyland that I didn't want and specifically told her not to buy, and sues me for, like, I think it was $50,000 or something. She's going to put a lien on my house. Well, I'm like, okay, that's not my house anymore, right? I've had a divorce from this guy. You're going to put a lien on my son's dad because of me. And I don't live there, and I don't have anything to do with that house. Like, it was already in the divorce settlement that he got the house and I was paid out. So how unfair would that be? So I did join forces with him. He wasn't a bad guy anyway. He just completely freaked out, and it turned out for the better. But I helped him make sure my grandma couldn't sue him, but she won the judgment against me because the judge was elderly. And he said, I don't care. Your grandma's on a fixed income. You shouldn't have let her spend all that money on your kids. I'm like, I wasn't even around. Half of it's when I was sick with my cancer. I'm dying in a bed while she's off shopping with my kids. And she had a shopping problem in general. So my whole family at this point now thinks I'm a thief and I'm a bad person, and I've left the church, and now all this stuff. So no one ever again in that family ever again speaks to me ever again. Not my uncles, not my aunts, not the people I grew up with, none of them. I never saw any of them again until my brother died. And so,
sorry.
Including my grandma that had raised me. And so we're having all that go on, and then the deaths start coming. So my ex-husband got married to a lady that was a wonderful, beautiful Christian, and she passed away. I think she might have thrown a blood clot. She was only 42, I believe. She just was passed away. When he got home from work, she was on the couch, gone. And then like my husband's uncle died really tragically. And then 2 weeks later, my brother has an accidental overdose. And so we're just getting hit hard. Like I saw my grandma at my brother's funeral, and she tried to talk to me, and she grabbed my arm, and I just walked away. And I do feel a little bad about that because I should have just been decent, but I was pissed. I'll be honest. I wasn't 100% godly at that point anyways. I was in the midst. I was baby Christian. I should have had more forgiveness. I think I did forgive her in my heart, but not to her face, which is cruel. But she gets sick right after.
Oh, okay.
And she dies. And so I did go to the hospital. I swore to her face because I always told her I would take care of her because my grandpa had died. And I said, I'll never see you again, ever. And my cousin called me, and he's like, it's like real, it's time. And I almost didn't go, but I did. I went and told her I forgave her and that I loved her. And me and my mom and my children prayed for her. It was just me, my mom, and my daughter, my second oldest daughter were there. And we prayed, and we're like kind of holding her hands. And she'd been in a coma, like a semi-coma for a little bit. And we said, Jesus loves you, and I'm not even, my kid still talks about this. She's like 20 when this happened. My grandma's eyes pop open. She's been like not with us for like 48 hours. She pops her eyes open and as soon as we said, Jesus loves you, that was all we said. She starts screaming bloody murder. And so I left the room because I was like, this is way too much. And I'm like, get the sedative. Like I went and found the nurse. I'm a nurse. I'm like, she needs to go back to the coma because whoa. And my mom's like, that was really weird. And it happened in front of the rest of the family members. Like my aunt was there and her sister was there. And like all these people were over talking, like right there, like by the bed. And it was like they didn't hear this. It was really weird. They're all Mormon. It was like they didn't hear what me and my mom and my daughter all heard her scream. It was really weird. But
like
it was only when
was it like a
yes.
scream of terror?
Yes. When we said Jesus Christ, she lost her mind screaming. No, she said no. And I was like, okay, we're done. And we still talk about this, me and my daughter, my mom. And my one daughter's always like, was it like we were in another place? Like they didn't hear us, And I was like, right. I don't know. Like at that point, the woo woo and all the stuff, I was done. Like I was just like, I'm getting out of this room. And it's because I think she was so indoctrinated with Josephsmith and Mormonism and blah, blah, blah. They don't focus on Jesus really. So we said Jesus Christ, right? And I think she thought we were maybe trying to take away her special stuff. So I don't know what that was about, but she did pass away. They bury you in your temple garments, in that apron and the whole get up that I told you about. And they go in and the family members dress the dead and dress them in their temple stuff. And I don't know if they say prayer or whatever. I've never been part of that, but I know that the family members take care of that. And so I wasn't there, clearly. I did go to the funeral, but I did not go to that part. And after the day we buried my grandma, I never saw any of my family ever again, except my one first cousin that I've always been close to. So
Can you share with us what happened with your oldest daughter at this point?
Yes. Yeah. So at this point, we had reunited, but later it does take an extreme turn for the worse. And it's not over religion. Actually, it's over her husband. I did get very involved and get rebaptized and everything after this. And I will happily say all of my children have been saved. They've all been rebaptized. And even the one that we're going to talk about, she has been rebaptized separately with her husband. So I think she's in a Baptist church right now. I'm not 100% because she doesn't speak to me. We were best friends. And after all that chaos had happened and before, we had always been like very close because I was barely 20 when I had her. She was, I don't know, you always have one kid that reminds you the most of you. It doesn't really mean they're your favorite, although my kids always laugh and say she was. But she looks like me. She acts like me. She's kind of like me in a lot of ways. Even my ex-husband used to call her HJ for Heidi Jr. And it was always just a joke, but we loved hanging out with each other and everything until my grandma meddled in. And even with that, I always kind of just blame my grandma. I was like, it's, my grandma's fault. And so we had mended patch everything and everything was fine. And she had this horrible, and she does speak about this. So I want to preface with this, and this is a trigger warning for anybody that has had a sexual abuse done to them, because this is going to be a talk about that for a second. She was brutally on a trip. She was a flight attendant and she was drugged with her drink by the pilot. And I can't prove that, but I know she was because of her symptoms and what was going on. She woke up on the floor, bleeding from everywhere, and it was brutal. She lost full control of her bowel and bladder for 6 weeks. So I don't think this was consensual. And they say it was. She did do a kit immediately. They've never ran it to this day. It's been almost a decade. They just don't care. They don't care. And he was not from this country, so it would have been really hard to go after him. He was from the Netherlands, and she never knew him before that flight ever. It wasn't like a date. It was none of those things. And even when he took her phone, she had called the police, but she was really confused. When they got there, they thought she was drunk, and they gave her back to the abuser to go put to bed. So yeah, that didn't work out. But after that happened to her, she was clearly not okay. She came home for some time, and we tried to help, and we got her into therapy, and we did all that. And then she started feeling very like, nobody's ever going to want me. I'm never going to be, wanted as a wife type stuff. She'd had some really hard breakups. The missionary had left her, different stuff like that. And so I kept telling her, you're so young. You're still so young. And she was like, I'm almost 25 and I'm not married. That's a big deal in Utah. You have to understand. If you're not married by 25 in Utah 10 years ago, you're an old maid. Like, really, they felt this way. Like, she's like, all my friends are having babies and getting married, and I see them on Facebook, and I'm just this flight attendant. I'm just a glorified, what would she say? A glorified waitress, something like that. And I told her, well, just don't go back. Just stay here. She was living back east at the time, and said, just stay home and reground yourself. And she didn't want to do that. So she went back, and she started doing a little bit better. She was continuing her therapy, continuing all the things. And her roommate that she had lived with for quite some time, she was a Creole girl. And she was very involved in hoodoo. I didn't know that. And unbeknownst to me, they were doing some love spells, weird stuff, because she really liked this other guy she met. And they didn't say a name with the love spell, but she told me all about it later. And she said, now the room is cold all the time and things are weird and da da da. And I'm like, oh, great. Why are you doing weird stuff? Like, what is it? Like, she'd never been this way. She'd always been close to God. Like, I didn't understand what was going on, but I do know this. She was my most indoctrinated kid in the Mormon church. Like, I know that the break from the church was harder for her than anybody else. She had broke from it as well, but I know that the indoctrination was already there. So I think like she She still held a little bit onto that. And then she was really open to try weird things like that. Like all my other kids would have been like, get out of here. But she was always a little bit into the woo woo. And so they did that spell. And then they went on a vacation, and she was sitting in the middle of an airport. And this guy walks up to her and says, hey, God told me if I didn't talk to you, I'd regret it the rest of my life. And he's not like a 10. Like, I was like, wow, that is bold. He better be a 10 to be that bold. Holy cow. But it worked. Whatever. They started dating. I really liked him. I thought he was super nice. And about their second date, we'd only ever met him because they're back east and we're in Utah. I met him for breakfast for like 45 minutes. And then I hadn't seen him ever again for quite a long time. And then my daughter calls me crying one night, and she's like, you know, he pulled your credit report. He pulled your background check, and you didn't ever tell me you were a drug dealer. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I am a nurse. Like, do you know who checks on me? The FBI. Like, no, I am not what are you? That's crazy. She's like, well, he has it right here. I said, well, fun enough. I am starting my new job next week, and it's at a psych hospital, and they run like your fingerprints through the system and everything. They give you the whole background. So I screenshot it, send it to her, and it causes this huge fight with them. So she flies home. She's talking to me. We end up going on a trip, and we go to Italy, and, you know, trying to cheer her up. They're just new and they're dating, but that was really weird. We're still kind of like, whatever. He's a kid, you know, let it go. But while we're there in Italy, some weird stuff happened. And another person approaches us. He's like, hey, you should come on my tour. And I'm like, get away from us. My husband's in the sandwich shop. He's not going to like you talking to me. Like, go. Not that my husband's overly jealous, but this guy looked like a movie star, like for real. And he's like, no, I know. I'm not a creep. Like, look, I did Kourtney Kardashian last week, and he really did. He really is like a thing like that online, like to this day and everything. He does like celebrity stuff. And I'm like, why are you talking to us then? We're just normal. Like, what do you want? My daughter's like, no, let's see what he's got. And he is really cute, really buff. So she's like, oh, let's go on the tour. I'm like, all right, whatever. When, because my husband needs to be back. And he's like, yeah, $50 and you can come. And I'm like, if he does these for the superstars, like, why is he giving us this deal? But whatever. So we go and we do this whole thing, and, you know, we're going through all these back churches, and he's from there. So it's different than a regular tour. And he let us know. And we went to this one particular church. It was weird because it was above, and then you take these stairs down and it goes below. And then he's like, this used to be an old temple, like for gods and goddesses and stuff. And he's telling us all the stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Remember, I'm still a baby Christian at this point. I'm not doing any Derek Prince. I don't know anything about demonic stuff really at this point, other than like, don't play with magic and don't do love spells. That seems bad. Like basic things. Don't play with that. Don't do a Ouija board. You know, that's like the extent of my demon knowledge at this point. So we're there, we leave. She was weird on that trip in general, but remember, the reason why I preface this with this whole thing that happened to her is she's going through some stuff still. Even though it's been like 6 months, it's still not, she's not okay. So we're kind of blowing it off, and she's drinking too much. And you know, it's not good. And so we're trying to gingerly lead her back to like normalcy. And I'm kind of encouraging this whole thing with this other guy she met, because he seems decent other than this weird background check thing. So then we go on another family vacation right after this, and she's even worse when she comes out for that. And she is just on my one son. My son was going through, it's my husband's son, but I call him mine too because we raise them together. He's going through his Jesus phase. This is what we like to call it. And it literally was. He quit watching TV. He quit eating pork. He's like living by Judaic holidays. Like it was deep. And, you know, all of our kids are so different. When you have 6 kids, you learn to ride with things. I'm like, yep, whatever. Jesus face. We got to go to the store to buy new hot dogs. That's all I know because he's not going to eat these. And my daughter is just like yelling at him and being rude to him and like, why are you making mom do all that? Blah, blah. I'm like, you know what? You shouldn't really be that upset because it's not your deal. Like, you don't have to go to the store for hot dogs. Like, that's me. So we're off grid. And then we hear this crazy loud noise that night. And it's up high. We're on the second story. And I'm like, there is a bear. We are so off grid and we're right next to this river. We're in the redwood forest. And it's like in by kind of by Crescent City is the closest city, but it's really like in the middle of nowhere. And you can't even call for help. There's no service. We're off a solar generator. I'm talking, there is nobody. So I'm like, we're going to die because this bear is going to come through this A-frame because it's all windows. And so I make my husband get up. I'm like, get up. Like there is something going to come through the window. And then the kids start screaming. So I guess it's knocking on theirs, but they're clear up in the loft. And so, I mean, that's really high up. And my husband's like, there's no way. Like it's too high. It's not a bear. Like maybe it's an owl or something trying to. I'm like, you didn't hear the noise. That is not an owl. So he's annoyed. He gets up. We look around as best we can without going out. We don't want to go outside. So he's like, nothing's getting in here. It's fine. Well, my kids are scared. They're right by me, the two middle ones. And then my oldest, she's sleeping through this and she sits up in her bed right then, but she's not awake. And she just goes, Minerva, no. And then she lays back down. And my little kids, the middle ones, they're probably like 9 and 11. They hysterically just lose their minds. And I probably would have forgot about this whole thing. I would have remembered the animal thing, but this Minerva thing. But the kids thought it was so funny. They kept saying it every 5 minutes the whole rest of the trip. Minerva, no. Ha ha. They're laughing and they just think it's hysterical. I don't even know anything about stuff like that at this point. I'm just like, you guys are really annoying. And so, she's been weird. She's even weirder. The kids are making fun of her. She was so cruel to my one son that I finally was like, if you need to catch a plane, I will take you to the nearest airport. Like it got to that level. And she was just like, whatever, you guys always let them get away with everything. And I'm like, no, you're just being wild. Like, I don't know why you're picking on him. And she just didn't seem like herself at all. And so that vacation ends and, he's moving in. He's talking about going to ask her to get married soon and all this stuff. So he flies out. We meet him one more time after this. And at this point, we're kind of a little bit not as happy as we were because he pulled our credit. That's so weird. Like, and tried to say I was a drug dealer. Like, I don't know. That we were a little salty on him, but we were trying to be nice. And he was fine, I guess, but it was different than the first meeting for sure. And then so he finds out that we had some loan and it's temporary because it's going to be paid off in tax season. But my daughter's on this loan with us. And he's like, yeah, as soon as you pay off those loan sharks, maybe I'll ask her to get married. Like, I'm like, so you love my daughter and want to do anything for her for time, all of time on earth, but you can't handle that she has this loan for 3 more months until I get my taxes. Like, that seems weird. But he's just being strange. So we kind of are talking to her a little bit and he flies home. She stays and talks to my husband on the way to the airport later. She says, he's putting a lot of pressure on me about coming out here and stuff. And I don't know. And she just seemed like she was upset. He said, I wasn't there. And he's like, she just seemed like, he was really pressuring her about this stuff. So all of a sudden, right after this, like, no kidding, like 3 days later, she locks me out of the bank account that we have jointly. She does all this weird stuff. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, now it's an overdraft. I'm like, I'm sure it is. I can't do or see anything. I can't put money in. I can't fix anything. Like, my check didn't go in. What are you doing? And she's like, well, you just need to have all this taken care of. And I'm like, okay, but it's Christmas in a week. Like, can you wait? Like, taxes are right around the corner. This is all going to be taken care of. We can separate everything. She's like, no, I need it done now. And I'm like, okay, but what about your brothers and sisters for Christmas? And she's always been my one kid that was really good with the other kids and stuff. Like, as far as like understanding or helping and whatnot. She goes, I don't know, but I didn't have 6 kids, so that's not my problem. And I
So
was like, wow. Okay.
clearly this is spiritual. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So what did you find out about that?
So, after this happens, literally, it took about 2 weeks with this whole money thing, right? And she doesn't come home for Christmas. She doesn't talk to me. She changes her phone number. She locks me away from, she deletes me on Facebook. Any way I could contact her, and she's clear across the country. She's clear back east. She is being moved by him and his family to their area. And he had already told me, like, I'm never getting married outside of my town. I'm never doing any, like, all of this stuff that was super weird. And I'm like, dude, you're not the bride. Like, it's supposed to be the bride's family and stuff. So, yeah, it was weird in general that he was like, I will only ever get married in this one church. And I'm like, that seems weird. Like, what are you, Catholic or something? And he's like, no. And I to this day don't know what that was about. But I do know this. He cut her completely off from us. And apparently I'm a toxic narcissist. And she just left and never talked to us ever again. Well, it didn't seem like something she would do. It seemed really out of character for her. And not only for me, but my son was only about like 9 at this time. And they were like super close because when I was sick from my cancer, she was the one that had to step in and help me with him because his dad just did not handle it. And so he loved her like a mom. And she just stopped talking to all of us.
Going back to Minerva,
Oh, yeah.
tell us how that played a role in this.
Yes. So it's coming. So right after Christmas, my husband comes home and I'm devastated. This is like, I am literally probably the most depressed I've ever been, even with all those problems I told you and my brother dying and all this stuff. Like, this one was worse because it's not finite, right? She's right there. Like, I could go there maybe, but then I look like the crazy person they say I am. So what do? You just pray. I'm getting close to God at this point. Like, I am really trying to hone in and break off things off of my family line because I'm learning, because my husband's ex-wife, this is what I told you, you'd probably laugh about, sent me Derek Prince. And I never heard of him ever. And so, right? Oh boy, it was. And this woman, we had been through it with this woman. This wasn't just like some nice lady. This way, we had been through court with her like 1,000 times. And so I honestly believe God intervened, and she is a Christian. And I think, listen, anybody can deliver a message. And she did. And I'm grateful to this day that she did, because we became actually really good friends after that for a small amount of time. We're not anymore. But it just like faded out. But I think I really needed that at that time. And so she sent me that, and my husband comes home, and I'm deep in always studying the Bible, everything at this point. And he goes, hey, you need to listen to me. I'm like, hey, I'm listening to this thing. Stop it. You're bothering me. He's like, no. Shut everything off. I need to talk to you. I'm like, okay. And he's like, look where we were a year ago. And I was like, right, Italy. And he's like, yeah, but look where I did a check-in. I'm like, okay, good for you. I wasn't trying to be rude, but I was like, I'm listening to Derek Prince right now. Like, you're interrupting me. And so he's like, no, you need to look at this. And I'm like, okay, what? And he's like, we were at the Temple de Minerva. You remember the Minerva thing? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, don't you think that's weird? And I'm like, a little bit. He's like, well, have you ever read the story about Minerva? Like, what's the deal with that? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, yeah, I don't know either. So I'm like, okay, fine. I'll go look. So I go look it up, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So apparently the story goes that Minerva's temple, her dude is Poseidon, and he's there, and he sees Medusa, which more people are familiar with Medusa. And, she's praying for Minerva at the temple, and he sees her, and she's beautiful, and he's overcome, and he's in this temple. This is the story of Medusa. And instead of Minerva being upset about it with him, which is what she should have been, she gets mad at Medusa and curses her with the snakes on her head. This is how that happens, which I didn't even know that. So I'm like, okay, I'm reading this. And then I start looking into like Minerva history, and what pops up? Well, Minerva's on the state seal of California. Where did we go? We were in California right after that. I'm like, okay, this is getting a little weird. Even my husband was like, right, that's weird. And so he's the one that was kind of like, this is, I don't know what's going on, but something's going on here. And so I'm like, all right, that's all pretty odd. And then the Minerva thing. And she said, Minerva, no, yells it in her sleep. So I'm like, okay, that's weird. And then my daughter comes home, my second daughter, her full sister, the only one she speaks to in the family at this point, except my mom. She says, did you see her new tattoo? I said, do you think I did? I'm in another universe from her. No, what? Why? She got a full sleeve. I'm like, great. Because I'd already told her, like, I don't love a full sleeve tattoo on girls. Like, no offense. I would love, liked her not to do that. But, and she goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. You didn't, it's not about the tattoo, mom. It's what it is. So she yanks it out and she shows me. And it's a full sleeve of Medusa with the snakes and everything. She goes, but wait till you see the post. And I'm like, all right. So she's like, shows me this post, and I have a picture of this too, like full on with her writing it. I cut the names because I try not to, I don't want to dox them. And it just says, this is how I felt after my rape, so full with snakes. And I have it. I should just read it because it's pretty, it's pretty powerful.
And while you're looking that up, Heidi, I just want to do a quick side note. Our past guest, Lala, who was in a sorority at college, talked all about how they worshiped Minerva.
Really? I didn't know that. I didn't even know that. Wow. This one threw me. I mean, honestly, I did not know anything about this stuff until I do now. And I'll tell you guys why I became the Micaiah of my time, is what I always joke about. Not Micah, Micaiah, which isn't a great calling. But here's what she said. Some people ask why I didn't add color or a flower or something prettier. Well, the meaning behind my tattoo isn't pretty. Medusa, just like myself and many other women, were raped. Medusa was then cursed, and that's how I felt. I felt after being raped, ugly, and so low. I wanted to represent how I felt in the middle of a curse. Beautiful, but full with snakes. And yet I wanted a sense of strength with her. Following my Medusa, there is a guardian angel. So she had a cherubim, which isn't always good either, right next to it. Because without my guardian angel, I would not be here today. I remember wanting to be gone from this curse, but an angel kept me here. This tattoo means so much to me. I am so blessed to be here today and be alive and be a survivor. Now she posts this herself, so I'm not oversharing. Okay. She speaks out. But I think it's weird that she didn't say this. She didn't say, I remember wanting to be gone. She doesn't say from this earth. She says from this curse. But an angel kept me here. Kept me where? In the curse? I don't know, because I've never spoken to my daughter ever again. It's been 7 years. And the one thing I will tell you guys about people, and I have tried, she's had a baby, she's got married, I've sent presents, I've sent sorries. They weren't the right kind of sorry. I don't know. Lightning struck her house once, and I did get to talk to her when lightning struck her house. That was a weird story too. So we're sitting at the table, and she was coming home. My mom got there to show me the picture of the brand new baby. And I said, this just needs to stop now. I wasn't even that mad. It was probably that much right there. And all the family was there. We were all sitting around the table. And all of a sudden the phone rings, and my mom answers, and there's just screaming. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like as a nurse, I start thinking something happened to her incision. I don't know. Something's wrong with the baby. Like I'm freaking out. And my mom just hands me the phone because she was scared. My mom doesn't do great in an emergency. And she just throws the phone at me. And I'm like, do I talk? Do I not talk? I'm on boundaries. Like, should I mind the boundaries? And I just didn't know what to do. So I just said, I love you and I hope everything's okay. And she said, I love you guys too. She didn't say me. She just said, I love you guys. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, lightning struck my house and blew my wall out and it's on fire. And my husband ran in there to put it out. And he's a firefighter and a pilot and all the important things. So he was putting it out himself. But He was fine. I said, well, I hope everything's fine. Yeah. And that was it. Like, it was really weird. Like, I talked to her yesterday, right? Like, it was strange. And then hell was to be paid the next morning by my mother. He called my mom and he said, if you ever do that again, and he was screaming, I will make sure she never speaks to you again.
Well, Heidi, this is a classic example of the spiritual second heaven warring for your daughter, warring through this, her husband. It's all spiritual, as you know. And so we have to remind ourselves this is not about flesh and blood, but of
No.
principalities, wicked places. And so I just want to say your mother, who's a born again Christian, prayed you in. You and your mom have the power of Jesus Christ, and your daughter is going to be prayed in through you and your mom. Amen.
I hope and pray. Amen. Because I just always feel like I can't go there because I think he will have me arrested. I do. He's that bad. He's bad.
Well, just to
And
encourage you, just try not to look at it in the natural eye. Just keep your mind focused in the spiritual and in the heavenly places where Jesus is. And I will be contending. And I ask every one of our listeners to contend for your daughter. And I will be hearing back from you at some point. That's the
thank
faith
you.
we can have. So
Amen.
I
Yes.
just want to, can we kind of circle back in a little bit about the Mormon beliefs? Because I think it's
Mhm.
important that, your calling, your mission is to expose these secrets, because these are life and death decisions. We're talking
Yes.
heaven and hell. And, I think of Galatians 1:8 and 9, where it says, if anybody perverts the gospel or changes it into something else, they will be accursed. It's so important, because one thing that stands out is that different cults, the Masonry, the Scientology, all the different ones, Mormonism, not only do they have secrets, but they change things. What does that tell you? I mean, Jesus Christ says he is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and his word will never change. And it's the truth.
Yes.
So let's
Yes.
talk about a little bit about why they change. You made a mention about the internet. It's not good for them. And let's go over some of these, just highlight some of these beliefs that are completely demonic.
Absolutely. And for my daughter, one last thing that I'll say is she did have a baby girl. And I do feel like God gave me a tiny gift. That little girl looks just like I looked when I was little. And
Oh.
sometimes that's torturous, but a lot of times it's good. And I try not to lose it anymore because it's been a lot of years. People are like, oh, she just cried for 2 seconds, but I'm here to do something different with that. And I do hope and pray that everybody can pray for her, because she was inside of me when I did this. Okay. When I went to the temple, remember, she is the one that was there that literally in utero experienced this. And her name was chosen, which I won't share. I will with you after the show, but her name is was given to me in the temple. And I used to think that was really good. I used to think that was a really good thing, but not anymore, because she had a different name chosen for her my entire pregnancy. And when we both left that day, I looked at him and he looked at me after we were doing sealings for the dead, which every time you go to the temple after you go for yourself, you do for dead people. And so that is necromancy. I don't know how else to tell people, that's just the definition of things for the dead. And Mormons get really upset about that, because they're like, well, they can accept it or not. They're up there waiting basically for these things to be done for them. And, you as the proxy person stand in and repeat this traumatizing thing over and over and over again for all these dead people, including Hitler and Obama's mom and all the famous superstars and, all the people.
Yeah, this goes really deep, very deep in the
Yes.
demonic.
Yep. And just because you're not Mormon, don't think it's not happening to your family. Please. If you want to look on familysearch.org, you can see exactly how much of your family has been implemented into their DNA websites, like their genealogy websites. Let me correct that, not DNA. They do pour into the DNA sites, but just the genealogy is theirs. And so, it's very important to them. And I find that very interesting and strange. And I also find it strange that they use you as a proxy. Like, you don't go through for that dead people in your heart. You do that by your body. Like, today I am Jane Smith. And today, as Jane Smith, I am doing this as Jane Smith, not for Jane Smith, as Jane Smith, the dead person. So when we talk about stuff like that, it gets dark. And the whole basis of Mormonism is a lie, first of all. But second of all, It says in the Bible, even if another angel, it's almost, well, God knows everything, right? Comes to you and says he has another book, right? It's a lie. And it
Yeah,
says that in the Bible. But
right.
yet, what happens with Joseph Smith? He's an angel, but he's a
Yes,
dead
can
guy.
you thank you. Can you start from that point for those just the
Yes,
whole story behind Joseph Smith, the plates, kinda take us through the story?
of course. So Um, Joseph Smith was this is now there are 5 accounts of this story. Supposedly, he was 14 years old and didn't know which church to join. I might have to pause. There is a giant spider. So, Joseph Smith did have this account. This is one of them, one of 5, and people can look this up. The church's narrative is the one I'm going to share today, the church, the LDS church, because we'll be fair and we'll just start it this way. So he said he didn't know what church to join. So he read the Bible and it said, if you do not know something, let you ask of God, which is true. And he went into a grove of trees and darkness overcame him, and at that time, he was, kind of I mean, I've said passed out before. I'll just leave it at overcame him because people got mad at me. But regardless, it's like this fit of darkness. And then God the Father and the Son show up to him, which are separate people in the Mormon church, and spoke to him directly, like God. I mean, not even Moses could do this, but Joseph Smith could. So he says, look, don't join any of them. You wait, and we're going to send you somebody to help you find this other book, and you're going to go off of this and you're going to start your own religion. So he does, and this angel comes to him, Moroni, and that's the big statue on top of all the Mormon temples, the angel Moroni. Well, the angel Moroni is also a dead guy. So look, angels were never people. That's just not how it works. So technically, he's not an angel. I just hate to burst anybody's bubble that way. He can't be. He was once alive on this earth as a Native American that is now exceedingly white and delightsome because he's been elevated. And so that's the story. And he tells Joseph, "Look, I'm going to help you, but we'll see if you're ready." So he tests him like once a year on the same day every single year for like 7 years. This goes on. And so he goes to the same place. He goes to the hill Cumorah, or the mound. Okay. The hill Cumorah, and he communes with this angel, our dead guy, every year on the fall equinox. Well, people that practice magic know that these are important times. So the fall equinox and the spring equinox, especially to somebody that practices Solomonic magic or Martinism, which is a magical form of masonry, those are the 2 times a year where you can conjure and talk to the spirits. This is what they say. And so I can't prove that Joseph Smith was a Martinist. I can prove that he was a Mason because the church has come out with it. It is on their website now for everyone's enjoyment to see. He was not only a Mason, but a Master Mason. And he was elevated to a Master Mason in one day. That's not normal. So he knew
Wow.
some stuff. Yeah. And
Just get this straight. Are you saying that the Mormon church put on their website that admitting that Joseph
yes,
Smith was a Freemason?
yes, it is everywhere now. And that Hiram, his brother, was as well. And this is out there. Absolutely 100% now out there. So yes, it is a known fact now that you can be a Mason also in the church, and that if you go on and look at their website, they even have a YouTube video, which is more fun, that says, "Did you hear that Joseph Smith was a Mason?" And then it's like, "Yes, he was. And many people were Masons back in the day, blah, blah, blah." So that whole thing is out there for everybody to see. I think the YouTube video is more funny. I think that's worth a look at. It's like a couple minutes long. It's just like, "So you heard?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we heard." I just think they can't do anything about it anymore. They're like, "What do we do with this?" Okay, just throw it out there, like just like the rock in the hat, right? Like that used to be a no, but now it's a yes. So I think that they just ran out of excuses. So they were like, "Yeah, yeah, so what?" His brother's name was Hiram, like Hiram Abiff.
What a shaky
So,
foundation. Okay, so
oh,
can you so tell us more about the Joseph Smith story,
so
continuing on.
Joseph is 14 and had that revelation, but he didn't get the plates. A lot of people think that he did like at 14. No, at 14, then 15, then 16. He's doing this for a while. And he's going back every year to the same spot. And the only reason why we know this, it's not hearsay. And people get really ticked when I talk about this because it's an affidavit. So the Hurlbut affidavits are available online for anybody that would like to look them up. And what happened with Joseph is he got kind of in trouble for being shady, treasure digger that sucked at it. So, I mean, people were treasure digging in the time. And this is what the church will say. Everybody was doing magic then. Don't worry about it. Folk magic. Yep. We did the folk magic. It's fine. Everybody did it. And so I'm like, wait a minute. No, that isn't what it is. Because when you look deeper, which I did, it's Solomonic magic. And that's not folk magic. Is it a part of folk magic? Sure, it can be, but it's way more serious. And to this day, if you find a practitioner, which many are still out there of Solomonic magic, they'll tell you it's not the kind of magic you want to play with. So in this affidavit, the guy next door, Willard Chase, where Joseph Smith found his magical rock and was friends with them digging a well, and their families had gone together multiple times to treasure dig. He gives his testimony at this court hearing. And remember, they're hanging witches at this point. Okay. This is not a joke when he's talking about this stuff. Like, we have to put ourselves in the time frame. I don't know if you would go on paper in court and write this stuff down just because you hated Joseph Smith, because this is what they're going to say. He just hates Joseph Smith, and that's why he said this. No, no, no. This is a bigger problem than that, because this guy went on paper in a court case saying Joseph Smith would go every year. He would borrow our black horse dressed all in black in the middle of the night to talk to this angel every year and get these plates. And so also they went treasure digging with us and made all these symbols in a circle, and they were using divining rods, and they slit our black sheep's throat and bled it all over. Like, this gets gruesome. And so I'm like, wait, what? Like, this is insane. And so I'm thinking this maybe the guy did hate him. I don't know. Well, problem is he's not the only one. There's multiple affidavits of this. Joseph Smith wasn't like tight-lipped at all, I don't think. I think he was pretty happy with himself about all of his magical stuff. And not only that, but Joseph Smith had been sick as a boy and had typhoid fever. Dr. Nathan Smith was his physician that would come, even though these people are supposed to be dumb farm people from Harvard, to come and treat Joseph. Notice the last name. Dr. Nathan Smith again. And they're like, no relation whatsoever. None whatsoever. Okay. They were raised right near each other in the very same area, which isn't where they told us they were from. Originally, they want to say they're from the burned over district. Okay. That this is where all this stuff was going on. Sometimes they talk about Pennsylvania and mostly New York, Palmyra specifically, but they never bring up Massachusetts. That is where Joseph Smith's family comes from, right near Salem. And if you look up that genealogical tree that they so nicely made for me at familysearch.org, like, it's their stuff, not mine. You can go right up his uncle's line, certainly not up Joseph's line, because they will obfuscate that one. But if you go up Uncle Jesse's line, you'll just find some answers. And his grandpa, Azael Smith, not Azazel, super close though. Whatever. Somebody was like, it's still in the Bible. Okay, whatever. I don't think I'd be naming my kid that, but you can do whatever you want. As Azael Smith was born to Captain Samuel Smith of Topsfield, Massachusetts, involved in the Boston Tea Party. And he was a selectman of the town, which means he was no dumb farmer. This is why I bring this up. And his father, Samuel Smith Sr., not Captain, born 1666, 666. He was the one involved with the Inquisition and the hanging of Mary Duty. And this is all very easily looked up. It's history. So why did they lie and say they were from somewhere else? Why would they not say, hey, we have some pretty awesome family that were involved in, the Boston Tea Party. He's a captain. Mormons are very like into like America, all America, you know, they're patriotic, all the things. So why are they hiding that? Well, because it leads to the Inquisition. And Mary Duty supposedly was innocent. And what do we know about the Inquisition? A lot of times it was alchemists who were busy doing things they shouldn't be doing that were hanging the witches, right? So he was the one. He was the accuser. Without his testimony, literally, it wouldn't have happened. And 132 days or 132 years later, on the same exact day, is when Josephsmith received the plates from this angel. Okay, that's a little weird. I mean, even if you grok that, you can look it up. What day did Mary Duty get hung? And what day did Josephsmith find the plates? It's the same day. And it's on this fall equinox. Like, I'm sorry if you believe in spiritual things. Like, I can't help but wonder, like, was this spirit what it says it was? Because now I'm curious. And not only that, it doesn't correlate with the Bible. And anytime that happens, and if I were to go to a Mormon missionary, let's say, and I said, hey, what about in the Bible where it says you're not supposed to believe another book, even if an angel brings it to you, but an angel brought it? Like, what about that? They'll say, well, Heidi, the Bible's only correct in as much as it's translated correctly. Do you know how many times that's been messed up? I'm like, do you know that your plates don't even exist because the angel wanted them back? But that's fine. Okay. So they have their own translation of the Bible called the Josephsmith translation. They do use the King James Bible, but any contraindication at the bottom will take you to another verse where you are now well informed, much better than anyone else, that things are fixed. Also regarding Masonry, multiple prophets, and I can't remember which one it was, state the rest of the world does not have the true form of Masonry, but we, the LDS, do. So Masonry is not new for the Mormon Church. The thing that helped me the most, I feel, with deciphering a lot of the things I was learning at this point was John Dee, and he was an occultist. Like, there's no way around it. Believe me, when I'm doing all this Bible study, I'm getting close to God, and I'm trying to figure out stuff with Derek Prince. I'm making the list of all like your family sins and all the things, and I'm trying to really work on this. Like, I'm getting rebaptized, and I get this feeling like, I'm like, God, just, direct me what I'm supposed to do. And I'm like, I don't think I'm supposed to do that. Like, I hear this, maybe you should check out this. And I'm like, nope, I'm not going to check that out. That is an occultist and also Crowley. And I'm like, nope, I'm out. Like, I'm not. I still don't have Crowley books in my house. I will read them online. But yeah, I start having these. So I talk to my mom and I'm like, you're going to love this. Remember, like, when I told you, like, he didn't like come and approach to me. I'm journaling. This is how this is happening. I'm just feeling like this is what I should do. I don't know why. Yes, go further in this particular thing. Research this. And then it's popping up with John Dee on the internet. And I'm like, who's that? And then I see he's an occultist. So I'm going to stop, right? I'm going to stop right there. Hard stop. And I feel like, nope, don't stop. And I'm like, is this a trick? Like, am I supposed to do? I don't know. So I don't do it for a while. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to wait. I'm going to pray about this some more, maybe look online. And I keep feeling like I should learn about this. And so I do. And Dr. John Dee, he's one of the first occultists to channel beings. He thinks they're angels, right? So we know this story. Dun, dun, dun. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, okay, these are angels telling him things, and he's writing them down, and they're deciphering them as well. They're writing them in code. Well, that's the exact same thing that Josephsmith is doing, except he's the one the channeling's coming through. On Dr. John Dee's case, it's his like assistant, Edward Kelly, and then they're writing down all these symbols, and it's called Enochian. It's a real alphabet. Like, you can use it to this day. And it looks very similar to Josephsmith's Reformed Egyptian, which is what they wrote theirs in. So I found that really weird. And I'm looking at these two samples and I'm like, wow, that is really close. And these stories are really close. And then we always get to the same story, whether it be Crowley, whether it be John Dee, whether it be Josephsmith or Muhammad or Parsons and Hubbard out in the desert. We do this. We get an angel or alien or whatever they're talking to. Okay. In Crowley's case, it was AWAS. He thinks it's an alien. And then the thing tells them, hey, write this down, make a book. The book becomes a religion, and then they think that it's benevolent, and then the thing wants something in return because it's never free. So in Dr. John Dee's case, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but the angels came one day after like 16 years of them going back and forth on all this channeling, blocking out the light, just like, Josephsmith did with his hat and his rock. They used an obsidian mirror, which was also a stone rock. And they're scrying. That's what is happening here. And all of a sudden one day they're like, you should swap wives. Because isn't that always the case, right? And so they do, and it ruins their lives. And he ends up raising Edward Kelly's kid, and they don't talk to the angels anymore, and he feels really bad. So he's also the original 007. If people want to check out his stuff, like it's all old. We're talking Elizabeth I. So he made a whole table and a way to talk to angels and a way to conjure and channel these things. Okay. And to this day, it exists. Enochian is a real form of magic. Solomonic magic is often used in with it, but it is its own form. And it has it's complicated. Another one that you shouldn't fuss with. Well, I don't think people should do magic in general, but look, at your own risk, you do what you do. There's always a cost and a price to be paid. I think we should just stick with God and pray a lot, but people want to be people. So with Awas, he was on his honeymoon. Crowley was. And so they were already very enamored in sexual things. And he was also really known to be a pervert. Let's be honest. It wouldn't have been outside of the realm of whatever for Crowley. With Hubbard, L. Ron Hubbard and Parsons out in the desert, they're channeling the Babylon workings. And what happens? They get this girl and they're also doing things to each other. We're not going to go deep into that are sexual of nature in the desert. And then, he steals his girl and runs away. It's always sex with these things, almost always. And so we know that. What did Joseph pay? Two things. Polygamy gets instated, just like with Muhammad, right? These are young girls, by the way. Polyamory, which the church doesn't like me to talk about. He is marrying other people's wives. That's not allowed, not even with the polygamists, not even to this day. You don't get to take the other people's wives unless they assign them to you because somebody got kicked out. Then it's okay. But typically, no. So that starts up and the book goes through and it becomes a religion. It's the same story every single time. But also, we're on that dark night in his dark clothes. When he receives everything, his young wife, Emma, is in the carriage. She's not with him. And a baby is born to them shortly after this. Okay. That baby was extremely deformed when it was born. They also named it Alvin after his dead brother that had just died right before this whole stuff started with the plates. Like he knew about the angel, he knew about that, but he hadn't got him yet. Alvin dies, which is also the firstborn son of his father. So his firstborn lived for a moment, is born deformed and died. He names it after his dead brother, who also died of an overdose of constipation medication. And no, I'm not kidding. So we have both firstborn sons dead to this family. If you know anything about magic or magical practices at all, that's important. Very Faustian in nature. So do I think that it's a benevolent, great church anymore? No. And just what I've told you so far is a lot. But when you look up the Josephsmith parchments, they will say they are not his. They will say they are his brothers. But regardless, they belonged to this family, right? We are messing with a magical family. Who are we like? How do you know someone? Go figure out their family, right? Or whoever they're raised with. It doesn't have to be blood family, but if you're raised in a certain kind of way, like in a cult, it's going to be normal to you to do certain things that other people aren't going to think are normal. So same thing. They had these magical parchments where they both died together. They go, it was his. And that's what they do. And so these are parchments that are very interesting. The church will blow them off and say they're protection. They're just for protection. There's Templar crosses on them. There's demon sigil stuff on them. All of them are traced out of specifically either the Magus or Sibley's Book of Witchcraft. And there is no way around this. They did not exist any other place then. So you tell me what is happening with this family and why they possess such a thing. Whether it was Joseph or Hiram's, I don't really care. This is underneath the planetary alignment, though, for Josephsmith. And did he die with his magical underwear on? No. But I'll tell you what he did die with. His magical talisman, his Jupiter talisman, straight out of the Keys of Solomon, the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon. That is not something you're fussing with if you're a normal Christian. I'm sorry. It's just not. That's the Goetia. This is magic. He had it in his pocket when he died. And how do we know it's Joseph's and no one else's? Because his wife wanted it back. And she identified it as his most prized possession. And she requested that it be returned to her, which she kept for the rest of her life, as well as a lock of his hair that she wore around her neck. Then they dug them up. And I'm not kidding. They dug up their rotting corpses and they took the coffins that they had been like decomposing in for all this time. And they made coffin canes out of the decomposing flesh wood. Okay. And they put in the knobs hair from both of the brothers, clipped their hair and gave them to the next prophet and multiple other multiple other people in the church, like Sidney Rigdon, Brigham Young. How do I know this? They're in the museum. They're in the Utah Pioneer Heritage Museum. You can go see it for yourself, or you can look at my episode 172 and you will see every single slide that I'm talking about, because I bring the slides because I know one thing. People aren't going to believe this. It sounds insane. I know. I had a moment when I started doing this myself, and then I finally understood. This is why you wanted me to study this. Okay. Do you know how horrible that is of a calling? I was like, Mom, I think I got to study the occult. And she's like, nope, absolutely not. That's the devil. No way. And I was
Well,
like,
listen, Heidi, it's important. This is occultic and it needs to be exposed because Josephsmith has led so many people astray.
he really has. And he did me too. And I wore Masonic underwear with the compass and square on each nipple. That is where they are. They're over openings in your body, like a sideways ruler on your belly button and one over your knee. Like, why would you do that when you don't even know what masonry is? They don't teach masonry in the church. Why are we doing that? What is happening there? Why are you doing that? Like, and that is their most sacred thing that they do. They get buried in this stuff, right? Why are we doing Masonic ceremonies? Why do we have witchcraft sigil stuff back in history? And they'll say, oh, it doesn't matter because Brigham Young came in and he cleaned it all up. You better believe he did. And then he turned it into a corporation and it gets much worse. But all of this, at least Joseph believed in what he was doing, right? Like, I don't condone that, but I mean, heaven's sake, at least he had a reason. Brigham Young, he was making money and getting good with the government. And then we become the CIA basically over some time. So it gets really corrupt every which way you turn. And now it's a huge corporation of corruption. That's what it is.
And I'm sure we'll direct people to your podcast so they can learn more about that. But before we wrap this up, there's a few things I want to sum up that I would love for you to just touch on. First is you mentioned that Lucifer, they believe, is Jesus' brother. And you also mentioned that some sins Jesus' blood doesn't atone for, and that Jesus was not from a virgin birth. That is blasphemous.
Yes. And they will lie about multiple things here. Not the Lucifer part. They'll take that hit. I don't know if you know this story, but okay, before we're born, we are alive. We aren't created by God at the creation of, the mother and father stuff coming together. No, we live in a pre-existence and we're alive up there and we have like all these lives. And by the way, if you hate your life and you have all these struggles and problems, you chose them all. You chose your parents, you chose everything if you're a Mormon. So you only have yourself to blame. Don't cry about it. And you're up there kind of like Scientology waiting to jump in a body, like basically. And so we believe as Mormons that the reason why they have so many children is so that they can bring all these spirit children down and populate the earth so that one day you can have your own, planet, but they lie about that now. But this is the story of God. So Elohim had his own planet, Kolob, and he populated it with all of these people, and Jesus and Lucifer were brothers, and it'll show them like at a kind of a council. Now, why is their God named Elohim, right? Elohim's plural, first of all. That means gods. And also, if you look into old religions and masonry and stuff, it's an interesting crossover, let alone Steiner's work with like outer spheres and all this stuff. I don't expect people to know because it's kind of occultic. But what basically I'm saying is an Elohim is anything not in this world, like a spirit, but doesn't mean it's a good one. Okay. So do I think Joseph Smith saw something the day he went and got those plates? I do. I don't believe he was high on mushrooms, but maybe he was for the ceremony itself. But I believe it's something he conjured here because I got smart enough, which I wasn't before, to decipher his little sigils, and I can see what they say. And they don't say, just protect me. They say, he who bringeth the spirits here, protect him. That's what it says. That's different. So he was doing magic, period. And also, like you said, there is not a virgin birth, because they say this, and I'll be delicate because I've been in trouble for this before, but you guys can look this up. He was created like any other man with passions and pleasures. Well, I didn't ever hear that part in the story that I read, but that's fine. They definitely don't share that in the church. Not anymore. There's a lot of things that they take out. They have shelves and shelves and shelves of books called the Journal of Discourses, where they will take back things that were said that they don't like. Okay, including the King Follett sermon, which is a big one. And they will say, this isn't prophecy. He is the prophet, seer, and revelator of the church. But that day might have been a bad day, and maybe that day he wasn't the prophet. So they get to pick and choose, because they'll do this with me every time I ask a question. Well, Heidi, I mean, the prophet's just a man. And then later, if they need it to be, you need to like manipulate somebody for something. Well, the prophet speaks directly to God. He's the line to God, and everything he said is godly, and it's direct, and it's word. So which one is it? That's very convenient. That's very convenient. And believe me, they use it. And so I've had it used on me multiple times. So there's that. The story of Lucifer and Jesus is Lucifer wanted to make everybody do all the things they're supposed to do and never have free will. Jesus wanted us to have free will. So Jesus and Lucifer go to war. This is the war in heaven with the angels. Okay. When the third of the angels fell from the heaven, they were supporting Lucifer. And then there were other people up there, because we're all alive up there, right? We're in our pre-existent, premortal life. And those of us that chose to go with Jesus at that time are white and delightsome. Like I am white on my skin. And those other people that chose no side, they didn't know what to do, they were maybe indecisive, they were called fence sitters. This isn't the mark of Cain. This is different. So any of the Black people in the world are this, and they were accursed people because they didn't choose a side, and they were fence sitters. And until I was like 14, grandparents and stuff still called Black people fence sitters. So and they were not allowed in the church or able to have priesthood in the church until 1978. They were allowed in, but they couldn't have the top. You can't go to the top heaven if you don't have the priesthood. So they couldn't go. They could go as our foot servant. I bet the church doesn't want that out there. And then the brown people are fine, because that's just the mark of Cain. And they also said we could get rid of that by, and I quote Brigham Young saying, buy up all of the native children so that we can intermingle with them and make them more white and delightsome. Oh, I thought they were beautiful already. I thought God created us all how we are. But apparently not so much. He also did say, if you ever found your wife in bed with a Black person, run a knife through both of them rather than let them live. So we used to have the one drop rule, and we were very involved in the whole Hitler deal. And that is how they got the basis for their startup for the genealogy stuff, was from the cards from the Holocaust via the CIA. And that is declassified now, through IBM, through Bill Gates' mom. And Bill Gates is still one of their top holding. It is their top holding in their portfolio. So as far as stocks go, he owns the most farmland in America, and only second is the Mormon Church. So do I think they work together? Yeah, I do. So there is the story of premortal existence, Lucifer and the brothers situation, and the question of color. And they only changed it in 1978 when they were pressured. So
Yes, once again, another change. Heidi, I can't thank you enough for just coming on today and sharing the lineage of what this cult is. And I pray that people heed to this information. They can find you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your podcast and any other final thoughts that you have? And one thing I do want to mention is Cody, who is on our channel. That's how I believe that you found our channel. He saw Josephsmith in hell.
yep. Yes. And I am supposed to talk with him soon. And I pray that that happens, because when I saw his testimony, it was when I was out and everything. And I was like, holy cow. Like, I sent it to everybody I knew. And I was like, this is actually amazing. Like, not amazing that he led people there or anything. That the story's sad. But the fact that people need to hear this, because I do truly believe that if you are a Mormon, you might think you are a Christian, but I don't think you are. And I don't think you know better. And I don't know how that plays out with God. Like, I'm not God, but I know this. Everybody always tells me to shut up and move on. Okay. They say, you can leave the church, but you can't leave it alone. Okay, look, I'm not the type of person that can save myself if I jump off a boat and see a bunch of people drowned. It's never been who I am. That is not who I am. I would probably die trying to save other people. And so I've died to myself many times with this whole situation, because you have to understand, when you speak out like this isn't all roses and rainbows. Like, they come for me. They make fun of me. They get me on lives and make fun of me. They tear me down. Like, and I fully expect it. Look, God told me to do this podcast, and I said, you are crazy. I think I back talked more about that than the occult, because I thought, who am I going to talk to? Like, I only know my kids and like 4 other people. Not even my family talks to me. And nobody really takes what I have to say really great in my regular life, because I'm a little blunt. Okay. And I said to God, I think you should think about this again. Like, he doesn't know, right? Because I only know like 4 people. I don't know who you want me to talk to. And also, I don't know how to run the computer because I'm almost 50. So I cried the first probably 7 or 8 episodes. I did it on iMovie. Like, I had no clue what I was doing. 0 clue, cried a lot. I do all my own stuff and it looks like I do. It's not amazing. But I do my best. I also never thought it would do what it's doing. However, I cannot thank my viewers enough that send me emails or whatever. Like, you changed my life. And that isn't my glory. That's God's. Like, that means I did something I was supposed to do. Right. Because that's hard. Like, it's hard to lose your whole family. It's hard to live here. We're stuck here. Our grandkids are being born. They're all here. We're not going to leave. We don't want to leave our family. And it's hard. People won't let their kids play with my kids. This is real. This is my real life. But if I can do that for one person and help them not be as traumatized as I was, right? Because my journey out took like 7 years. That's 7 years of my life I would have loved to have back. And the rest of it before that as well. Like, I mean, I didn't know better then, but it would have been nice to just love God and feel like I was enough. And you never feel that in the Mormon church. You don't, because they get to heaven by works. Everything is work based. And when they say give, they don't mean give from your heart like God tells you to do. They mean bring in your taxes at tithing settlement. And I'm not kidding. So if you don't do your proper 10% on your gross income, you're not going to the temple, and everyone will know, because you're not there on Ward Temple night. And why weren't you there? Everything is for show. And a lot of people in Utah, because I am a psych nurse and I work with this daily, they don't feel enough to the point where they're not here anymore. And that's not okay. That's not okay. Or they get addicted to things, right? That's not okay. My brother died from that. So I think if I can be a little humiliated and I can help somebody, then that's cool, right? Like, I mean, look at what happened to Jesus. I'm not Jesus, so I didn't have to go through that, you know. A little humiliation isn't going to really kill you. Or isolation, or people not wanting to be around you, or whatever the case may be. It's not going to kill you. But maybe this religion could kill somebody. And I hate to say it like that, but it's true.
Yes.
And it also could doom them, right? Like Cody's story.
Right.
And so if I can help with that and just be the mouthpiece, because like God can use anything, right? He can use a donkey. That's what Sean McCraney always says. I hope I'm not a donkey, but I try not to be one. But like, I'm not some perfect person that knows everything. I just study a lot. And so, and that wasn't even my idea either. That also was put on my heart. And so, all of this podcast, all of this stuff, and everything I do is centered toward that, for this, because I really truly believe it will help people. And that is why I don't leave it alone for the Mormons that want to, be upset about it. And if you are upset about it, then maybe you really need to look inside your heart, because maybe you have questions that you don't want to deal with too. So, and I hope so. I hope and pray for every single Mormon brother or sister that we have out there that's led astray to be able to see, because that's the point. I don't hate them. And most of them don't know anything. That's the thing. This stuff that I'm telling you guys is top tier, upper echelon, 1% of the church that knows this. And the rest of them are just like I was. Why did I wear the garments? Then, the Mason underwear, if I didn't know what they meant, because my grandma did, because her mom did, because that's what we did. And in a cult, I'm sorry, that's what it is. You don't ask a lot of questions, or you get labeled and you're the problem. That's your problem because you're the problem. And so I just think that we need to make it okay for people to question things. I think we need to make it okay if it doesn't make sense in the Bible. Like, if you're putting it next to the Bible and you're a Christian and it's not making sense, then maybe there's a problem, And I hope so. I pray that.
Heidi, I just want to thank you and affirm you in your calling, that you are called to bring the knowledge, to bring the truth. And it's a mighty calling, and I know it's not easy. And I will continue to pray for you. And God bless you, Heidi. As we close, Heidi, I just want to ask, can you pray what's on your heart for this calling that you're given? Yes.
Absolutely. So, Father God, I first want to thank you, because you changed my life and you saved my family. And I know that you've saved other people, that we are all God's children, and none of us are less than because of our skin or because of who we are, or any of that. We need to know that we were made specifically how you wanted us, and we're beautiful, and that we are worth saving. Sorry. And Father God, I do ask you at this time to please help us all to be strong enough to speak, and strong enough to stand, and strong enough, whatever it is, because this church is not the only one that leads people astray, and to help everybody pull out of the water, right? Like, let's not just save ourselves. That's not the point. To love one another, and to be strong enough to follow through on some of the craziest things that you've had me do, and have other people do, and to have the faith and the love and the affirmation and the foresight to just know where we're supposed to go. Listen to you, Lord, and no one else. Listen to your holy word and no one else. It doesn't need to be added or subtracted.
Yes.
It's perfect exactly how it is. And we don't need extra books. We don't need anything else. We just need you, Lord, and that's it. And I pray that you will put your hand on all of us, those listening, me, you, everybody, your husband, that we can continue in God's glory and work, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
And I also want to add to your prayer, Father God, that you would just cover and surround by the blood of Jesus, Heidi and her family. You will intervene in such a mighty, powerful way, that she would bless her 100-fold here on earth and in heaven. I thank you for my sister. Father, these are life and death decisions. This is heaven and hell. And I pray, Father, that people would seek the truth, that they would hear the truth that's been spoken today, and the truth would set them free. You are coming back soon, and we thank you for what you are doing. And I pray for everyone listening right now in their salvation in Jesus Christ. By the power and blood in the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.